Welcome to Werewolf the Podcast. This is episode 71. We're going to continue the story with things that happened. This one's called Jimmy the Wererat. Surprisingly, it involves me meeting Jimmy the Wererat. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, like Monique Lafleur did, I hope I said that right, please go down to the description in the and follow the link. See, I can nearly speak properly-ish type thing. Anyway, hope you enjoy this story. You can also buy the book. It's in the link down below as well. That's the link to Amazon. Anyway, getting back to the story. Well, I kind of have to show no shock that there are other were-creatures out there, but meeting Jimmy Simpkins was a heck of a surprise. See, I'm trying to listen to you guys and be less of a swearwolf in my podcasts and videos. It seems that people do not mind the gore and the murder, but the odd swear word causes real offence. Fucking bizarre. I found that somewhat amusing, but hey, offence is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. It was on one of my many journeys to London and Brighton that I met Jimmy. I often come down to the south of England. These fun journeys are to, do my usual killing and murdering in the capital and localities and enjoy the leisure activities afforded to me in London and Brighton. I'd been partying for several days now and I'd been doing some creative things in and around London. It was a time for me to take a break and get some relaxation, so Fen and I booked a weekend in the South Lodge Hotel. It was a 5-star venue, and it was time for some pampering and stuff of myself and Fen's paws while we ate wonderful cuisine and sparred ourselves into a comatose state of bliss. Massage and pampering were the werewolf's order of the day. After the fornications and the deprivation that I had just put myself through in Londinium, it was nice to get out into the country. Well, as much of the country as you can get sort of down in the south of England. There's no real wild country, but the nice open lands of Sussex with beautiful places to wander and sightsee is a nice place to go. Oh, I like that you have me pegged for being a heathen and not enjoying the finer things in life, but you have to remember that I have an artist's eye and a genuine love of history and architecture. There has to be some reason to stay in the British Isles with its inclement weather, high tax rates and stupid laws. My reason for doing so was that I loved Old Blighty and the past that it so happily celebrated, and this area of the world was like chocolate box photos of rural English life. No, not that one with the cross-eyed kittens with pink bows. You know the one I mean. There were lovely places around here where we could go and enjoy our other vices in life. Leonardsley was just up the road and was one of the most beautiful sights I'd ever seen in Britain. I recommend it to people if you pass that way, especially in autumn. The trees are a sight to see, and although inferior to my own work, the sculpture and gallery are interesting too. Anyway, I digress as I often do in these tales. I'm sorry. I awoke in the middle of a sweaty Saturday night. There was gentle breathing from the bodies lying on either side of me. I had met a lovely couple in the bar, and they had convinced themselves that they wanted to be crazy and have a threesome, which included in me. What could I do? It would have been rude not to, and it was their honeymoon. I bought them champagne and supplied them with copious amounts of quality cocaine and molly. Oh, and Viagra in his case. But I believe that is a common side effect of taking that particular drug in humans. I was on holiday, so I wasn't cruel, rude or nasty to sweet Nicky and James. I just had an evening of great food, great wine and great fucking. Oh, sorry, there goes the swear wolf in me again. I'm genuinely sorry. In the Shadows. It's a great film. I woke because Fen was calling me in the night. I dreamed about fire and death. You know, the usual wet dreams I love. I could do that thing in the back of my mind where I could hear Fen just above the screams and the roar of the flames. Will, wake up. Will, wake up. Will, wake up. I tried to ignore this, but much like that urination we tried to ignore in the night, I eventually succumbed to its badgering presence and woke. I looked towards the bottom of the bed through crusted eyes to see a large rat sitting on my duvet at my feet. I mean, it just sat there doing sort of everything you associate with rats, you know, the twitching of stuff and the ruffling of whiskers. But the unrat-like thing was that it just stared at me. It was a little unbelievable, and at this moment I was not a werewolf. A werewolf, get it? A werewolf at all. But it just sat there and stared. It was not scared. As my senses returned from the dream world, more became apparent about the weird nature of this rat. Number one was that it had a purple glow and bright red luminous eyes. Yeah, I know that's not normal for rats outside Chernobyl and Sellafield, and I suppose from some dodgy experiments that unethical scientists do with glowy jellyfish genes. I had never heard of a glowy rat. Red eyes? Well, isn't that normal with rats? At this point, I have to tell you one of my favourite facts about the Welsh language. What is Welsh for jellyfish? It's pysgod wibbly wobbly. Pysgod is Welsh for fish, and if I have to explain which bit is for jelly, then you're as dumb as the animal it names. Fun fact, huh? Back to the purple rat. The other strange thing about the rat was that it was floating about 6 inches above the bed. I was a bit nonplussed about what to do or say in that moment. I looked at Fen and then left and right to the sleeping couple. I knew they wouldn't be a problem right now, as I'd mickeyed them with downers and sedatives so they would shut the fuck up and leave me alone. I don't know what to do at this point, I sent Fen mentally as I raised myself onto an elbow and scratched my head. The rat stopped its twitching and spoke. Well, I suppose it didn't speak, it did that telepathic thing that Fen and I do. Hi, it said in a squeakier than squeakier voice. I suppose it wasn't a voice, but it was a telepathic it was just super squeaky. I've been sent here to meet you and greet you for the sake of my human. It then went silent, and I think that it thought I was going to say something, but I had no idea what to say. I slowly opened the drawer next to me without taking my eyes off the rat on the bed and pulled out my drugs to check them. I don't think I'd taken anything that should have me seeing shit. No, definitely not. In fact, I'd sobered myself up before sleeping, so I knew there was nothing trippy in my system. Okay. Please don't take this the wrong way, but what the fuck are you? I asked. I'm like him, sent the rat, pointing the equivalent of a ratty thumb at the posit Fen, who looked a little shocked at this statement. My name is Bert, and I'm best mates with Jimmy Simpkins. Even in my head, he telepathed this with a pitch that changed at the end of the sentence, that in Britain means that it's a question, while in Australia it means it's the end of any bloody sentence. Jimmy Simpkins. Jimmy Simpkins. I don't know any Jimmy Simpkins. I was a bit befuddled. I don't remember names at the best of times, so this wasn't really an uncommon finding. He thought you might say that. He knows of you, though, and he wanted me to make first contact with you as an introductory thing. I hope you don't mind me bothering you so early, but he has something for you to think about. An offer of sorts. It will all be worth your while, Will. The rat squeaked, crossing its arms. Pause. Its hands across its... I don't know what you call them. It sat up and crossed its front legs like a disapproving middle-class lady. Through the little rat, I found that Jimmy was to be found in Crawley, of all places. I mean, a rat finding its home in Crawley makes sense. I'm not saying that Crawley is a ratty place, but then describing rats, you may say that they crawl, or some may say that they make their skin crawl. I don't know. I would meet him in Crawley this afternoon after I woke up and got rid of him and her, and that could be an exciting and fun thing to do. I would hope that they showed crashing regret, the couple that is, at what they'd done last night, and questioned whether their sham marriage had any inherent value after sleeping with me. There was only worse sex from now on. They'd both had the best, so what was the point in trying to maintain a relationship if the emotional and physical intimacy they now shared was never going to be as good as the one special night with me? That it's not being egotistical for once either, that's the truth. Anyways, moving on from this reality to the next. Crawley is a quintessential new town. It's a new town with Gatwick Airport stuck near it. It's halfway between Brighton and London with excellent transport links to both. Oh, and with the airport right there, the world is the crusty shelled bivalve of your choice. Our meeting was to be at the Ye Oldie Punch Bowl pub. We were to sit down and discuss something that the rat said was an important opportunity for Jimmy and me. I knew I had to go just out of curiosity. I mean, how often do you get to talk to a were-rat? Have you ever done it? I suppose it might be sort of difficult to know if you've done it or not. I suppose unless they tell you they're a were-rat, and then you'd have to believe them. I was actually pleasantly surprised at the venue. I expected a mock Tudor building or a renovated and ripped out rip-off of the original oldie worldy pub, but it was a beautiful 15th century timber-built building. The only downside to the establishment is that the planners had obviously been on super drugs or being super paid off when it came to the critical decisions in the vicinity, because next to it was a god-awful Domino's pizzeria. Not the best decision of the zoning committee by that council. I sat in the car and sent Fen deposit on a perusal of said establishment before I entered. These things could often be a trap, which could in itself be fun or a headache, but I like to make sure that the scene was as clear as it could be before I entered the place. As you know, I also like to walk into traps as long as I know they are a trap. The place seemed clear. There was no police, army, or others that seemed apparent. And if it was a trap with the few people present, it would just be another sort of remarkable story to tell. Fen wandered through the pub invisible and gave me an idea of the clientele and the available beers. Both were key to me enjoying an afternoon with a strange were-rat in an ancient inn, I find. At 1:55 p.m. precisely, a golden 1949 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith saloon was parked on the high street. It was driven by what I refer to as a twat in a cap. It was a proper chauffeur in all the 1920s gear, 1930s gear. In the back, hidden behind an actual Financial Times, was a man who then folded the paper and climbed out of the gorgeous vehicle as his man opened the door. He was all alone, well, apart from the driver, and I could not see any vehicles or people that would be related to or watching the car. He either had no security, or his security was that shit hot that I couldn't spot it. Either way, it seemed like a good thing. So far, the building and the man had the relevant ticks on my sheet to allow the meeting to happen. The man himself was, well, ratty, but a very expensive dandified ratty. He was a short-looking because he was tall but crouched. His hair was black, but the top of his dome had pushed its way through his remaining hair. This had been covered by the worst toupee I had ever seen. It was grey against his black hair and did not hide his bald spot well. It more or less advertised to the world that he was bald! And not only that, it told everyone in his vicinity that he was wearing a mini-wig. His face was, I've just got to say it, ratty. A large nose, small dark eyes, a moustache that was trying hard with its few hairs, and a constant twitch that made it look like whiskers. It was the face of a human rat. His arms were long and furtively held in front of himself, and the fucker only scampered when he walked. He actually fucking scampered. He had tried to make up for his physical hindrances with a downright opulent, dandified showing of his very obvious wealth. He was dripping in gold from every finger. His neck was adorned with thick gold chains, and hanging limply from his much too thin wrists were golden bracelets. The suit was a salute to the modern migraine. It was yellow and black check, and so well tailored by what must have been the most outstanding tailor that ever lived to make him look good in that shape, even though he wasn't. Now that was a true talented tailor. The yellow and black check was large and bold. His shirt was purple and opened 3 buttons from his collar. It was probably silk or satin. It was now too painful at this point to try and guess. He also had a neckerchief and a pocket swathe. No, not a pocket square. It dangled in some same horrendous material. I could not see his watch, but I knew it would be something like a Rolex day date from the 50s. Not just any Rolex, but the best. Probably from the year they first came onto the market. His shoes, of course, were black churches. As he made small talk with his man, he was past a snappy yellow trilby with a purple feather in it, which was donned whilst he looked at himself in the window of the rolls, and once happy with its positioning, he snapped the rim, snapped his fingers, and both sidled and scampered into the pub. I had never seen scampered before, and I'd never seen sidled, but he pulled off both simultaneously, and he did it very successfully. What a dapper little cunt. By this time, the posit had returned and was sitting next to me in the car. I looked in the mirror and saw my gob open in disbelief at what I'd just witnessed. I then turned towards Fen to see that wolf's gob open in disbelief as well. There are very few times in life that we are both lost for words, but this will rate highly in my mind as one of those times for the rest of my wonderfully long, immortal life. This was going to be brilliant. I couldn't wait to see and talk to this man-rat type thing. He was exceptional in so many ways. What was I going to do to fuck this guy's life up for him? We were, I suppose, about to find out. As I stepped from my Porsche to stand on the pavement, I looked down to see that the little rat posit, Bert, was waiting for me. I'd been watched all the while watching, which made this whole thing much more fun. I could see through my posit's eyes when he went on his worldly wonders, so I presumed that Jimmy had been watching me doing the watching through Bert's eyes. It must have been a pretty amusing thing to watch. He was a step ahead of me. A challenge to me in a way, but I would accept it as much and flow like water with it. As Bruce Lee told us, when water enters teapot, it becomes teapot. What a twat. He is just waiting inside for you, boss, said the little rat soul as he went on all fours and started across the street from the car park to the pub. Fed and I looked at each other and, without words, just followed the little fellow. He was a little fellow. As we entered the premises, I snapped my cufflinks to prepare for this Bond style. Jimmy had already taken a seat at a table facing the door, and he smiled at us. Yes, us. He gave Fen and me a nod and invited us to sit at the table. The table was for four, and at this point I could see the glowing purple rat posit sitting by Jimmy's hand on that table. As we got closer, the man was much more impressive, although he smelled all wrong under that pungent aftershave in which he doused himself. I recognised most of the renowned parfums out there, but this was not something I'd ever smelled before. It was a rich mix of spices and berries, a very expensive smell, probably handcrafted for the man, much as his suits had been. I expected to, get a feeling of nervousness and creepiness off this person, but he was charismatic and welcoming. His voice was rich East End Cockney as he rose from his seat and shook my hand. His grasp was solid and decisive. He then asked us to sit. What an old school gentleman. He sat down with us, straightening his trousers and put his serviette on his lap. He did all this without making eye contact, and then he offered up the menu for our perusal. Here you go, Will. I hope I could tell you that, or I could call you that, or would you prefer Mr. Beast? I smiled as he paused, meeting my eyes for a moment. I nodded for him to continue. Good, Will. Here we have good old-fashioned English food and lots of it. I know a lot about you and that you have an appetite for food and all that sort of thing. At the end of this sentence, he touched his nose with a finger in a conspirational way while making brief eye contact. This place should at least solve any anger issues. The last fucking thing we need in Crawley is a fucking angry werewolf. Sorry, Fen, he said with a slight head tilt to the posit. I knows you cannot eat. Bert's biggest regret here is the chance not to savour his scran like he used to. I looked at the little rat and it shrugged and nodded its head in a very human manner. Jimmy picked his way through the menu with difficulty, arms outstretched, then turning to the bar, shouted for his glasses. The thing that came from behind the bar had been invisible to this point. It was human, I think, but only just, and it reminded me of how Terry Pratchett describes detritus the troll in his books, but with a difference that this thing was made out of meat and not rock. He was a huge man who had, judging by the state of his face and the state of his knuckles, well, he'd been a prize fighter in the back streets of some hellhole since he was 7 years old. He was that old school muscle. No brain, just muscle. You don't get them anymore. Thanks, said Jimmy to the behemoth, taking the proffered box, opening it, and putting on the brass half-moon-framed glasses. That's the thing with us rats, not the greatest of eyesight, I'm afraid, as he shook and returned his menu. The thing continued to loom over the table, and waiting, and trying to intimidate? Well, maybe he wasn't trying to intimidate. He was just a fucking picture of intimidation. He would never have made a very good ice cream man, I think. I was lost in looking at the visual art piece before me when Jimmy looked up at me and then at the ogre. He smiled and pointed with his thumb. This? I know, he should be called Tiny or something, he said with a small laugh. He is Mr. Beige, he laughed, then went back to the menu. Oh, Mr. Beige, like colours like in Reservoir Dogs where they have colours denoting the gangsters instead of their real names. Jimmy stopped reading and paused for a moment and then answered looking over his glasses. No, his name's actually Mr. Beige, William Beige, Billy Beige. Billy, could you get this gentleman and me a drink? What will you be having, Will? He asked, looking at me. The drafts here are all exceptionally excellent and have a quick through rate, so are the best in this bit of Britain. Billy here looks after them as though they were his kids, which I'm sure is better than him having the real thing. Okay then, Jimmy, I'll have a pint of whatever Billy recommends. Billy smiled at this. You could see he was genuinely pleased that I trusted him to try his beer. A pint for me? No. A pint for Will and a Campari and soda for me, Billy boy. He now closed the menu and placed it on the table as the size 17 boots walked away from us towards the bar. Tapping his fingers on the menu, he leaned forward and crossed his arms, bringing himself closer to me on the table, and he smiled. Well, Will, you're here. He sat back and opened his arms to the room. What do you think of the place? Two drinks were plonked on the table. I never realised the plonk's onomatopoeic nature until Billy placed them on the table. I had not even noticed that Billy had arrived back at the table. Probably a skill learnt in his obviously nasty past, the silent upwalk. Yeah, it's a lovely, nice place, I told him. Jimmy leaned in once more as if to confide. See, I loves this little town. They were going to bin it in the 70s, you know, with all that new town nonsense that they was doing. I could not allow that. I built this place, you see. Been mine for a few 100 years now. I smiled and lifted my glass to him. Cheers then, Jimmy. He joined me with his glass and we chinked glasses and we both took a sip. He then watched me for a moment after my drink to see my reaction. At first, I thought that I'd fucked up and that he'd put something in it, maybe sedatives or something. Unlikely. I would have noticed something like that if it had been the case before pouring it in my face. How is it? I could see the excitement in his expression. I wanted to say it was awful, but I knew that would actually be crass and just me being a dick, so I told him the truth. It's probably the finest pale ale I have ever drunk. I wasn't lying, it was. Jimmy's visage broke into happiness, and he raised a thumb to Mr. Beige. He loves it, Billy, he shouted. I drank another mouthful as the man sat staring at me with his hands on the table. I'd obviously passed an important test. Jimmy, are you a wererat? I asked. What the fuck gave it away, Will? Was it dear old Bert here? He said, pointing at the little rat that seemed almost embarrassed at this attention. I am a wererat, yeah. He lifted and took a sip of his own drink. Will, are you a werewolf? Yes, Jimmy, I am. As you can see, I have my posit here, Fen, and when we combine, we become a big, hairy, wolfy beast. Yeah, Will, I knows that, to be honest, Will. I got in contact because I have a proposition for you two. I need somewhat of a stranger to do a stranger job for me. I need your skill sets, and I need it done with extreme prejudice, if you know what I mean, he said, tapping the side of his nose with a middle finger once again. I knows that you are one of those sociopathic murdering killer types, that you do those things for pleasure. You get a kick out of the sick shit and stuff. You know, just doing it because you feel like it. I ain't one of them myself. I tend to be just the business end of things, although I've done my fair share of dirty deeds in the past. But this one is a special one. I heard about yous from a friend, and he says you're a proper sick fuck. He saw me flinch at this. He opened his hands and proffered an apology. Not a bad thing to me, Will. The world needs the odd sick fuck to get stuff done. Not too many of them, but it needs some of them. I butted in this point. I don't know who your friend is, but I don't like the sick fuck moniker. I think of myself more as a I don't know, a cheerful psycho. You know, a psycho enjoys what he sees as his job in life. No, actually, job isn't strong enough. What would vocation maybe covers it? Right, said Jimmy, showing a little confusion and concern on his face. Well, my mate Blanco describes you like this. He's the kind of guy that takes a knife to a fist fight. Not only is he that guy, but he does not take it because he wants to frighten someone with the knife. He does not take it because, he wants to scare. He takes it because if the shit hits the fan, he's willing to use it. No, in fact, this man is the one who wants to use that fucking knife to cut someone up. Fen stepped in at this point, laughing. That's an awesome description of you, Will. Although you don't need a knife, you've got me, he said as he showed his claws. I drank some more wine. Blanco, whoever the fuck he is, should be a poet, Jimmy. That is a good description. What is it that you're wanting then? He went into his problem and he started to plan to sort it all out. We ordered food and ate while he went into detail. And that, my friends, will be the next story. Thanks for listening, and I love you alls.